Welcome, everyone, to Women on Wealth. And this conversation today is exciting for me in two reasons. One is we're going to have a conversation with Rachel Thebault, who is the co-founder of Woodley Lowe, which is a brand wardrobe essential for Gen Z girls. Rachel, hi.
Hi, Jules.
So Rachel and I have known each other for, oh crap, almost 30 years. I think it's 30 years this year.
Mhm.
We met one of our first days as freshmen up at Colgate University. And I think there's a lot we know about each other that, we may or may not want to share. So, and I'm so excited about this conversation because it is one that I know will resonate with a lot of the listeners. There are so many women that are constantly talking to me about wanting to start their own business, wanting to pivot in their career, and they just never get there. And so having these conversations with successful entrepreneurs is amazing. And so, Rachel, not only are you a successful entrepreneur, but this is your second go around. So before you founded Woodley Lowe, which we'll talk about, you owned Tribeca Treats in New York City for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And so you went from baking to clothing.
Yeah. And yes, exactly. And just to give you a little bit of background, kind of all my life growing up, I had entrepreneurial bug. When people were playing like school or doctor or whatever, I was playing store. And
Yeah.
I loved like lining up my stuffed animals and pretending to sell them to my friends and etc. I loved having like receipts and all that stuff. And so then, we go to Colgate University. There's no business major or anything, but major in economics. And as many economics majors at Colgate do, left and got a job in finance. And so I started my career in investment banking. And the idea was just to lay some groundwork and figure out what I wanted to do next. And during that time that I entered investment banking, it was a time when people were getting promoted without going to business school. So I stayed for 7 years in banking and really got the groundwork of how companies finance themselves, how they grow. I was specifically working in the retail and restaurant sector. So I was working with a lot of small cap, high growth retailers and restaurant businesses. And it was really interesting to me to hear these entrepreneurial stories from our clients and help them achieve IPOs and mergers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I did at some point get to a point where I looked at my life and I was like, okay, this has been great. 7 years. I'm moving up in the ranks. I feel good as a woman achieving this, but is investment banking the career that I intended? Or do I want to do something that's more, entrepreneurial business related myself? And
Sure.
I did think that, starting my own business would give me a little bit more flexibility in my life, whereas banking is demands a lot of hours and travel and etc.
Yeah.
So I quit my job and went to culinary school. This was kind of sidetrack. I'd always loved cooking and baking,
Yeah.
and it's something kind of clicked in me. I was making chocolates for dinner parties and stuff, and people started asking me our friends were all starting to get married. They started asking me to make stuff for their engagement parties and weddings. And that's when it kind of clicked in me oh, maybe there's a business here, like dessert catering. So
Right.
I went to culinary school with the immediate intention of starting this business. And after culinary school, rented some kitchen space with a woman who's a big cake decorator, Elisa Strauss from Confetti Cakes. She makes fantastic, huge model cakes, whatever.
Yeah.
And I got the bug from her to do cake decorations, but I kind of felt like there was this middle market that was missing between the grocery store cake and the multi-thousand-dollar cakes that she was doing.
Yeah.
Something that was customized, decorated, special, but not super expensive.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what led me to start Tribeca Treats as a brick and mortar bakery. And that was great. As you said, I ran it for over a decade. It was about 12 years in.
Yeah.
And really the issue with me with that business was a couple of things. I had just renewed my lease and they had bumped up the rent to make it just uncomfortable enough, not so bad that I could walk away, but just uncomfortable enough. And then just issues with the labor market. Really, the quality of labor that was available to me was declining. And this was mostly on the sales counter side, not so much the kitchen side, but it just became really too hard to run a business that was so labor intense at the business model that I had started it at. So for a variety of reasons, I decided to close that. And I think it was well timed. I don't think we would have survived the pandemic. So that was in March of 2018.
Right. Because you were in Manhattan.
Exactly. We're in Manhattan. So then immediately when I closed that, I knew right away, I need to get into something new. I need to start a new business. And I actually spent the next little over a year researching some different ideas. I had an idea that I wanted to do like a women's club, something like the Wing, but for a little bit more mature women, maybe stay-at-home moms who were like planning to foray into a new business or something and just needed a third space to connect and work outside their home.
Yeah.
And, again, was having trouble kind of figuring out how to raise the money for that and et cetera. But, one idea led me to another. And I got introduced to the woman who is now my business partner. And we connected because we were both researching an idea that was kind of wellness AI driven, kind of like a daily text you would get with wellness tips, et cetera.
Yeah.
But neither of us really knew. Both of us, she had an entrepreneurial background as well. And she had a background covering teen retailers in the equity research field. So that was kind of aside. We started talking about this. We didn't know anything about like technology, and we were interested in wellness, but we couldn't figure out like what really was the hook that would make this idea work. And so out of the blue one day, Netta said, what do you think about athleisure for teen girls? And she has 3 boys, but has this background in teen retail. I have 3 girls. And so, the frustrations with trying to buy like high quality everyday clothes for my kid. I think a lot of the brands they're attracted to are fast fashion, which is terrible for the planet. The brand messaging is bad. There's companies like, Brandy Melville that only sell a size extra small. There's, the sizing is off, even for like beloved kids brands like The Gap and J. Crew, for example. I took a look at their size chart, and their size 12 and 14 and 16 that they offer really only equate to the smallest 25% of the pediatric growth chart for those ages. Yep. So if you're a normal 10 or 12-year-old girl, you're having to size up into what they say is like 14, 16, doesn't feel good. And so I just, there are all these problems with size, with quality, and with like environmental responsibility. So we decided to launch Woodley Lowe to try to fix that.
So 2 things. One is, I think you have an important message here, because a lot of women assume, maybe it's almost a myth, that if the idea is not screaming at them, it's not a good idea. And you clearly went through a process of trying to find the right fit, and it took you a good period of time, it sounds like.
I think you do have to have some patience to figure out, like, you might have a fantastic idea, something that people would really like. Yeah. But is it something that they're going to pay for? Is it something that people need? The other tip I would have is, even if you're filling a need, you still have to think about the branding. Like you can create a need is basically. So if you're good at branding and if you're good at marketing, you can make someone think they need something that they really just want.
Right.
But I think really, to have the foundations of a good business, you really have to be filling a hole. You really have to be like, okay, why do people need this in their life?
Yeah. And the other thing that you brought up that I think is also important, especially to when you look at the studies of the Gen Z generation over our generation, is that there is this awareness now a lot more of the world, and, doing, and having a purpose for your business. You mentioned it. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the initial things when we thought about, okay, we went from trying to figure out this AI type based business to something where we were actually going to physically manufacture product. Yeah. And to me, it was just very important. My sister is highly involved in a lot of like climate change stuff. And to me, it was very important to think about, okay, if we are producing more product into the world.
Yeah.
What are we doing to give back? Like, and we did feel like there was a need for this. Like, we are filling a hole. We are producing for a reason, but what can we do to counterbalance that? And
Sure.
so we just think a lot of this stuff, it's not a marketing ploy, it's table stakes. Like, if someone is starting a business, they have to think about how that is impacting their community and the broader world around them.
Yeah.
And so, whether it's for us, for example, we have both an evergreen return policy where if people are finished with their clothes, they can send it back to us for partial credit, and we will figure out if it can be resold or upcycled or whatnot, just how to make it live longer or dispose of it responsibly. We also have a resale platform on our website so people can resell their own Woodley and Lowe clothes.
Love it.
And then we also wanted to have a give back portion as well. So when someone purchases something from our website, we give 3% of our revenue to a variety of different community-based organizations, depending on what our community is interested in. So we have a few that you can choose from yourself. Like, when you're checking out, we have one that's environmental, we have one that's mental health, we have women's rights. So people can kind of choose like what's important to them, and 3% of our revenue will go to where they allocate it.
That's great. So you mentioned also the sizing, because the first thing that a consumer will look at when they look at your clothes is that the sizing is different. And I know that there's a purpose there as well.
Yeah. And it's something like, I'm not going to lie, it's caused a little bit of friction for us because it is different. Exactly. Yeah. And it takes a modicum of effort for people to put in to like figure out what the size is. But we know that once people do spend that time doing our fit quiz, they're very happy with the outcome.
Okay. Yeah.
But there's two things. We wanted to bridge the gap between kids and women's brands. So offer things that were more appropriate to this group of girls that are, probably like 11 to 15 years old is kind of our sweet spot. They're all growing at different times. They're growing in different ways. Girls are, some girls gain a lot of weight and then sprout up. Some girls get really tall and skinny and then fill out. You don't know how they're growing and stuff. So we wanted to have more flexibility on how to fit them. And so what we did was we took thousands of data points from the CDC on height and weight combinations of girls ages 12 to 18. Okay. And we plotted them out in a scatter graph and then kind of drew, because we didn't have the funding to offer 40 different sizes. Yeah. We kind of drew an oval around the core 75%. Yeah. And we said, okay, this is going to be our size range. And then we figured out we could divide it into 5 different sizes, A, B, C, D, E. And then our pants all come in 2 different lengths. So, your waist will be one size, but it doesn't dictate what your height is. Right. Girls are not growing in a straight line. Right. And so we created this ABCD system. And, honestly, when our girls are shopping, no brand fits them the same way. A size 8 in one brand could be a size 4 in another brand, could be a, medium in another brand. They're always checking the size charts regardless when they discover a new brand. Yes. So it's a little bit extra work because it's something totally new, but in the end, it's not. And we think that it fits them better. There's more flexibility. We're not labeling them with, you are a medium, you are an extra large, you are this. We are giving them room to decide, well, I like to wear this baggier and this tighter and kind of play around with it.
I love it. Cause the girls, at least my girls, that's, you're hitting it all on the head, right? Yeah. My girls, first of all, won't try anything on in a store. They insist it will fit, and then they're going to take it home, and then they try it on there, and I always have to take it back. And then number 2 is there's certain things that they want incredibly tight, and then there's others that they want, incredibly loose.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So I thank you for mentioning that. And so how do you, I know you have 3 girls, but how did you target the market of these, teens and tweens, everyone's calling it? I know you have a story around that, especially in the pandemic, because you just launched this a few years ago.
Yes. And, I think the tricky thing with targeting teen girls also is none of them want to be targeted by the age that they are, right? They always want to be aspirational and look up to the older girl, right?
Sure.
So it's been hard for us. We're like, okay, let's use college girls for our marketing. College girls love our product, but they don't need it as much. Really, it's the 11 to 15-year-olds that really need our product.
Yeah.
And so we're like, how do we get older girls to like and wear our stuff so that these younger girls look up to them? And because we were like, the minute we show a lot of 11 to 15-year-olds in our marketing, it becomes a kids brand. It's the 9-year-olds that want it. It's, so we've had to focus. We made a specific decision to focus on like the older high school and college girl as far as like a lot of our marketing. But those, it's been fun because those girls have been excited to be a part of the business and to learn from us. And so it's been easy to find people that want to help us with our marketing and social media.
Absolutely.
They are an entrepreneurial generation, and it's fun. It's really fun to work with them. And that for all that people say about how, their work habits are different. And yes, like they're totally different, their expectations and stuff, but they are driven and they're entrepreneurial, and it's fun. And so early on, we hired a couple high school seniors that were at the school that my partner's kids went to. And we had them run like a shadow Instagram account for us. This is before we even had a brand name, anything.
Oh, wow.
We just said, here, run this account. We're just doing like market research. It was kind of like an Instagram based focus group. Okay. And we could see like, what images are they posting? What are people responding to? What colors are they using? And then we used it to start polling people on, our brand name, our styles, like how our joggers were designed by this group. Like elements, do you like something higher waisted or lower waisted? Do you like this kind of leg band or this kind, and they informed us on all those initial decisions.
Yeah, that's amazing. And well, first of all, I didn't even know that you had high school and college kids working for you until we jumped on the Zoom. So I think that's amazing. And I hope you encourage them, because they're working and they're making money, that they need to open a Roth IRA.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
And then the other thing is, I also know from my research and experience from talking to moms and, just women in general about what they experienced growing up, the influence that you are putting on your girls, I think is just so powerful. Can you talk about how they've been involved through the process?
Yeah. I think, well, first of all, they are my built-in like immediate focus group, right? So if there's a style that they don't love or something that they need to like, and also actually, even before that, during the pandemic, they were our fit models too, because we couldn't be in person with anyone. So, the fact
someone had to do it.
our factory is based in LA, and he was shut down for a while, but as soon as he reopened again, he would send me samples, and someone had to try it on. And so we would try it on and my girls, and they, they express their opinions, but on a deeper level than that, I do think I love being an example for them as a leader in business, someone who's willing to take risks, someone who puts themselves out there, someone who is learning how to self-promote. And if you take it a step back further too, when I had to shut my bakery, that was a difficult decision, and I was pretty bummed out about it at the time, but was resilient and went on to do something new. And to me, that was kind of the biggest driver during that time in my life, was to demonstrate to my daughters resiliency.
Absolutely. Yeah. And every business has its challenges, and you go through the ups and downs. So I love it. And so why there's not enough women entrepreneurs? We see this all the time. What do you think would make women really great entrepreneurs that you have found?
Well, I think one of the qualities that I think across the board most women have that makes for great entrepreneurs is the willingness to juggle multiple balls in the air, right?
Yeah.
And you could be a financial advisor and run a podcast and be a mom and do this. Like you've got like a million things going on, and you have to figure out like how to sometimes sacrifice part of something to do something else. And you just have to make those kind of decisions. And every day as an entrepreneur, you are doing that. Like I am not siloed. I'm working in multiple different fields of the business, and sometimes some piece has to move around to fit another piece in.
Yeah.
So that I think is a quality that is very innate in women. Yeah. I think what comes along with that, though, and what I think prevents more women from doing stuff like this is the overall issue of childcare. And for women who choose to have kids, even with the most supportive spouse, which, I feel like my spouse is highly supportive and helpful wherever he can, there's still this innate sense of the responsibilities that have to do with the kids ultimately just fall on the mom. So whether it's like making play dates or doctor's appointments or whatever, if you don't have a personal assistant or a childcare person in your life that's doing all that for you, it is the mom that ultimately figures out that kind of stuff. And I think that maybe women need to be more expressive about vocalizing, like, we need to share these responsibilities with their partner.
Yes.
And we need to figure out ways to change that assumption so that women can put themselves out there more and be equally as available to jobs and their own businesses or whatever they want to do as their spouses. So.
I agree. I also think, I know that you mentioned in one of the other podcasts that you were on that you said having a business is like having a baby. And I think you've already expressed some of that with, the description of what you all have been going through over the last few years of the business. So
totally.
And I think that some women realize that to be successful, it is like having another baby, making that decision.
It is. I mean, it takes as much time, if not more, to and you care about it. Like, and no one will care about your business as deeply as you do. So whether it's your employees or whoever else you have running it for you at the time, you're always going to be tied to it in a different way.
No, I agree. And so the other thing that always holds women back is the financing.
Yeah.
And especially if you are going to rely on childcare, et cetera, you have to put money into the family as well for a lot of women. So for you, especially your background after having two businesses and starting on the investment banking side, what do you think are good options for women to think about when they think of financing, and what have you decided to do in your career?
So my first business, Tribeca Treats, was totally self-funded and then kind of like ran itself enough. Like, it was comfortable. There were issues like Hurricane Sandy ruining things, like where I'd have to put in more money. But I did that just kind of, I figured out a budget and figured it out how to make the daily operations work to support it until it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't make a ton of money, but it just ran itself.
It ran itself.
Yeah. This one is a little more different because there was more upfront investment required, and to, build out a nice website, to develop a line of clothes before anyone's buying it, etc.
Yeah.
So, timing was difficult for us because we were fundraising at the end of 2019 and early 2020 before we launched, while we were still developing our idea. We had a number of VCs and angel investors who were super interested in the idea. And we were having all these great conversations that were like encouraging us to go forward and do it.
Yeah.
We kept thinking to ourselves, okay, well, we just need to hire a designer and show them the designs. Okay, we just need to get some samples made of these designs. And once they touch and feel it, like, the investor will come in. Right. And unfortunately, all this was happening. And then March 2020, everyone we were talking to was like, I'm out. I'm not, like, no one knows what's going on in this world, whatever.
Literally.
So exactly. We were in this really bad place and time where we had expected to have all this fundraising, and we had already committed to our designer, to our factory, etc. And so we were like, okay, well, can we launch this on our own dime? And so we kind of figured out, we launched it. We basically like slashed our entire marketing budget. We're like, we'll be scrappy.
Yeah.
And all we need to do is build a website and make a product. And, yes and no. Like, the problem with direct to consumer as a business model right now is that people were spending a ton of money on marketing. They were not building a profitable business.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of these other companies have collapsed. So I think this was good for us. We looked at it, tried to be scrappier, but it's been hard to grow without a marketing budget. We grew an ambassador program where we had teen girls themselves, like, you know, helping to promote us, which has been great, but has not given us, like, we thought this like grassroots thing would go viral, and it hasn't given us the virality that we wanted.
Right.
So we self-funded, friends and family, and then we got to a point where we were like, okay, we see like profitability is on the horizon. We just need to like keep getting there. So we took out a small business loan, which I think is a fantastic option for people as well.
Right.
It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of like hoops to jump through, but you go to the Small Business Administration and you fill out paperwork, and they kind of broker it out to a bunch of banks, and you kind of field different offers. And finally one came along that was of a size that we needed, and it felt good. And the SBA then gives you protection that if you do go bankrupt, you're not personally liable for the loans.
Okay. Yeah.
And you know, it's a little bit more expensive than if you went to your own bank, but it gives you more protection on the other side. So
no, I think that's a great point to bring up, because that is something that comes up all the time, because most women are going to have to need some type of support. And how would you answer for someone that says, well, how do I go out and find VC opportunity? Where do I go? And I know, and then I realize you're in Manhattan, so you,
yeah,
your husband's in finance, but
yeah, I mean, we do have, and my partner had a lot of connections too, because she had been consulting for retail and fashion startups too, and she'd been connecting people with VCs. So having warm connections is pretty important. But beyond that, if you can't find any, so there's like Crunchbase, for example, is a great database where you can look up, you know, based on whatever industry you're starting something in, who's investing in that industry. And you kind of want to make sure like they're not investing in a direct competitor, but they know the industry and they're interested in it. And you can try to reach out, figure out, like, go on LinkedIn, figure out who from that VC knows someone that you know, and try to work your way into a warm connection. There's also nowadays a lot of women's groups. For example, I'm part of the Female Founders Collective, and which was it's started by a bunch of female entrepreneurs and angel investors, and they have lists of angel investors, and they have pitches and stuff. So and this happens. I think nowadays also you can kind of go like search around in your local community and find like groups of women angel investors. There are women who have built a lot of wealth for themselves and want to figure out ways to, and are not just wanting to invest it in like the stock market or whatever. And they want to figure out other ways to give back and to support women entrepreneurs. And so it's out there, but it's not automatic. Like, I think the biggest mistake is assuming you'll get funding. And I think one of the hard things is if you don't get funding before you launch, then you have to show like significant traction and like really special growth to get funding in the early stages, like after you've launched. So the timing can be tricky.
Yeah.
And I think a recommendation that I would give to people when they think about how much they want to invest in their own business is, well, there's 2 points. One, think of it like when you're doing like a construction project or something, whatever you think you'll spend, you're going to spend X% more than that, probably like, 50% or so more than that. So like, make sure
50,
you have,
wow. Yeah.
I mean, make sure you have a real cushion, because what happens is you get to a certain point where you're like, this idea is good and people like what I'm doing, but I'm still a year away from profitability. Right. What do? You don't want to just close the business because you've run out of money.
Yeah.
And so you end up most of the time going back to your own well.
Yeah.
So think about it with that expectation, and kind of create your initial budget with that in mind.
Yep.
So you don't spend too much too early. And then also, I can't remember.
Well, I was almost going to interrupt you to say, I love that you brought up the word budget, because I don't think we as individuals manage budgets enough personally.
Mhm.
So if you don't know how to run a personal budget, you better figure it out before you run a business budget.
Totally. Absolutely. And I know people, this was going to be my second point, but I know people who have started, women who have started businesses, and they're like, what do you mean like P&L? I just see how much money I have in my bank account. And I'm like, no, you can't. Like, and so I do think that if you're uncomfortable with managing a big budget or investing a ton of money, figure out the smallest way you can test your business, the smallest way you can start, and kind of, and you have to be patient, but just like a little baby step at a time. Figure out what's the first thing I need to do, and to see if this is going to catch on, and then take the money from that and reinvest it in the business, and just keep growing that way.
And grow it that way. Absolutely. Because I think that a lot of people have these successful businesses and they don't know how to continue to grow it. Mm-hmm. Or they're so focused on the business, they don't know how to manage their personal side. And I think finding that balance, especially as an entrepreneur and a female entrepreneur, is one of it from my perspective. And again, I'm just the advisor looking in on the finances. That's the biggest challenge that I think I find with female entrepreneurs today. So Rachel, I cannot thank you enough for this. I know I can go on and on and on, but I know you also are backing up into another meeting too.
Yeah, no.
But I would encourage everyone listening to please check out your website. It's just woodleylowe.com, correct? It's
Woodley Lowe, no and on
Woodley
the
Lowe.
woodleylowe.com. Yep. And follow us on Instagram, TikTok, get your daughters to follow us as well. And anyone feel free to reach out to me with questions, etc., through our website. So thank you.
Rachel, I appreciate it. I think I love the fact that you talked a lot about having the commitment, research, resiliency. You reminded me when you used the word scrappy, an old mentor of mine at JP Morgan used to say that all the time. So I love that word. And the only thing that you didn't say that I'm going to end with is that you are one of the most competitive people I've ever met. I mean, it didn't matter if it was like playing Beirut in college I think we tried and played rugby for like a hot second, pool, whatever. In your life, you have always been incredibly competitive. And I think that is also resonates with what you've been doing and the success. So
thank you.
Awesome. Good for you.
Thanks. Yes, competitive to a fault, but it has helped me definitely continue the drive to be in business even when things are hard. So
100%. So I love it. Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Jules. This was fun.